Good morning, everyone. My name is Zeshan Aziz, and you're in track 2. You're watching using OSINT and NLP to track jihadists in conflict zones. A little bit about my background. I just graduated from the University of Miami. I did this research a year ago when I was interning at Immunity Inc. Immunity Inc. has since been acquired by Appgate Security, and one of the other companies that we worked with was BrainSpace, which is the analytics platform that we're used for this research. I've been doing open source intelligence for a very, very long time. In years past, I've been very active at DEF CON's Recon Village, either as a volunteer or just as an attendee. I've previously talked at conferences like Countermeasure in Ottawa, Canada, and Pacific Hackers Conference in San Francisco. So a little bit of disclaimer, the usual, these views are my own. They don't reflect my current or past employers. The subjects of this talk that we'll be going through, they haven't been convicted of any crimes, and I don't accuse them of any crimes. We redacted the names of people that are still active on social media for their privacy. And any views on culture and religion on my own. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Middle East and the country of Syria, which has a very sad and complicated war going out. This presentation isn't about what group is good, what group is bad. This is just an academic research endeavor. And if you guys have any questions, you can drop it on the Discord, either in the general channel or send it to me directly if it's something private. So if you guys read the bio of the talk, we're going to be talking about someone called Salman Belarus. He is the commander of a group called Malhama Tactical in Syria, predominantly out of Idlib, Syria. I found out about him like a year and a half, 2 years ago, because he was pretty popular on Twitter. And I was reading a bit about private military contractors like Avian Barlow and Blackwater. He is kind of significant in being the first private military contractor that's like a Muslim group out of Syria. And the other interesting thing about him is that he had faked his death earlier, a couple of years ago. He came under a new name. There's a lot of information about him, open source, and we're going to be talking about how modern counterinsurgencies have changed and how Salman Belarus and Malhama Tactical is a great example of these trends. So the first list is we have some of his aliases. In Russia, someone leaked information from police records about who this person may be, but I can't really independently verify if that's true. So we're not 100% sure if that's his name. We could see that he went by several names. The first name he went by was Abu Rafiq, and that guy was killed in an airstrike. And then he came back as Salman Belarus and came back with a new Twitter handle. And people on the OSINT world online were able to match his facial features and his voice print and determine that it was the same exact person. He's really interesting because he speaks several languages, including Russian, Turkish, Uzbek, and English. His group provides small arms and tactics training. You could see on the top, there's a RPG training that his group is giving. And on the bottom, it's a raid in the mountains that they're doing. He claims that his group is made up of former special forces from all over the world. And that's hard to independently verify, but we do know from, you can see the video below, that his group is using suppressors to do these early morning raids. These tactics are definitely borrowed from the special forces world. So they're very sophisticated, and they kind of have brought some of these regional conflicts into Syria onto a new level when it comes to the sophistication of these actors. So this is an OSINT conference. So why are we talking about this guy in Syria? Because he's a really cool outlier in the OSINT community. He is openly talks to researchers. We could see on the right that is a diagram of people he's tweeting at or that have tweeted at him. It's over 100 people. He openly discusses his group's training, tactics, and procedures, which is a goldmine for people that follow this in the intelligence community, like at the National Counterterrorism Center in the US. And because he has a public unlocked Twitter profile, we can get a look at his online network, and maybe that can give us some clue as to who he is or who knows him in person. And if we scrape this data, we get a very highly, targeted data set that's really rich for this kind of investigations. So this is a little bit of visualization of how we scrape the data, the methodology. So at the top, we had Salman Belarus's account. We downloaded 200 of his most recent tweets. This was in November 2018. Then we downloaded and we looked at all of his about 3,000 followers, and we got 200 tweets from each. Those tweets include images, they include ads to other people, they include external links, they include anything that a tweet can contain. So what does that data look like from a very pretty point of view? This is in BrainSpace, the analytics software that we used. As you can see, it's kind of like similar to Maltego or Analyst Notebook, if any of you have used that. We could see on the bottom end is Salman Belarus's red node, and then these are all other people related to him. This data set had about 308,000 tweets. On the top right, you can see that there's about 11,000 accounts, and these are people either related to him with 1 or 2 degrees of separation. So now is the technology stack. We already talked about how Python was used in the data gathering phase for this project. BrainSpace, which is our analytics platform, stores the data. It allows us to sort data, and it does some basic natural language analysis. BrainSpace is very popular in the e-discovery space. It competes with other programs like Relativity and Palantir. Another thing we did at Immunity was we got all that Twitter data and we ingested it into Google Cloud, into their Vision API. So what that does is it takes all the tweets, and no matter what language it's in, it'll translate it. It'll do optical character recognition on all the images that are linked to tweets, and it'll label images as well. So what it lets us really do is on the bottom, you can see like, hey, like I want to write a query that says, show me all the tweets today in Arabic, where someone talked about the city of Idlib and posted a picture of a gun. You can't really do that natively on Twitter. Twitter doesn't allow you to search by image description, and it is a bit costly to translate everything. So Twitter definitely wouldn't do that with their fire hose. It would just be way too expensive. The other really cool thing about translating things through Google Cloud is that now I don't have to be a linguist. My data set can be in Turkish or in Arabic or any other foreign language. All I need to understand is culturally who the group I'm looking at is or how they operate. But most of the translation is done. Even if it's not perfect, it's a lot easier than me having to study a language and then do this research. It really lowers the cost of entry. So there's a really cool term that my old boss Dave discovered called disintermediation, and it kind of means that there's in disintermediation there's no intermediaries. So if you're person A and you want to talk to person C, you don't have to go through a person B. You can just talk directly to person C. With the internet and social media, it makes it very easy. Let's say on InfoSec Twitter, if you're really interested in talking to a top security researcher that have their DMs open and you want to ask them about some advice, you could just message them directly. In the past, you may have to go through a broker or a recruiter that knows them to get your question across. But now that's not there. This is also something that comes up, let's say, in the drug industry. In the past, if you're a college student and you wanted to buy some drugs, you might have to go to, a broker. But now we know students buy stuff off the darknet directly from vendors. It's also like, this also applies to extremist groups. Around 2014 to 2016, there were a lot of young girls in the UK who were meeting boys in ISIS and other groups in Syria. And they had very, sad lives in the UK. They were bored, and they're able to directly connect with people that they met online, get married, and have them fly them to Syria or Turkey, where they stayed afterwards. So disintermediation, like, it's a very neutral term, but it's important in the type of work we're discussing today. So if we want to look quickly at who Salman Belarus talked to, you can see on the top left, it's who he sends tweets to, and then who he receives tweets from. Overwhelmingly, he's sending tweets to independent researchers on Twitter, such as Caliber Obscura. He is a amateur arms researcher. He's very popular on Twitter. He will look at which terrorist groups are using what guns and where they may have came from. We have some other researchers. I know Mr. Ravinsky and Nad Woofers are also independent researchers that they just follow the Syrian war. So they're going to be talking to people that are involved if they're willing to talk back. And then Salman Belarus is receiving a lot of tweets from fans that are kind of just saying, hey, like, awesome job, like, we support your cause, you're doing great work in Syria. Like, they don't have to be people living in Syria, they could just be people complimenting him because they view him as a freedom fighter. The other cool thing that I was able to find is in Brainspace, we had copies of, all the 308,000 tweets. And I went through every single tweet that Salman Belarus had with people. It's only about like 200 to 300 tweets. And I found that he was talking to someone about how they can donate money to him through PayPal or Bitcoin. And they're talking about the logistical and security risks, which is really interesting, because if you're working in the anti-money laundering space, or if your job is to combat terrorism financing, this kind of data really isn't in the open source, but we could see that they're having conversations in person, well, on Twitter, about what's a good way of sharing or sending me money from anywhere in the globe. And we could tell that he also has access to accounts in Turkey because of the conversation. On the bottom right, you see a just paste it page. I redacted the addresses because this person is still alive. But this person raises money for people in Syria and is very well connected with all these fighters. So if some of the people I talked to said that the person whose page this belongs to is physically in Syria. Other people told me that they're just a fan. But either way, if you're in law enforcement and your job is to look at Bitcoin and trace it, you have these breadcrumbs that you're finding everywhere. And it was very easily found in the analysis tool that we have. And on the top right is a kind of like a GoFundMe type website that's used in Turkey, which we can see this person is trying to raise money to release prisoners in Syria, which may lead to the cycle of human trafficking and kidnapping that leads to organized crime in conflict groups. If you're doing analysis on which crowdfunding sites are susceptible to being misused, you can find this in the open source, what people are using to raise money. And this account also, we redacted the username from because it's still active. And if you're law enforcement and you want access to the Bitcoin address on this page, let me know directly on Discord and we can discuss that. So I was exploring a lot of the multi-go type graph that we have built into brain space. And just looking at interesting usernames, looking at their profiles and seeing who they are, we saw this interesting username. It was like 53 Muslim 53. And I clicked on him and I went to his channel, his Twitter page, and we could see that his pinned tweet, or his most recent tweet, was explaining how different grenades and fuses work. I didn't know if this guy was just reposting these videos from somewhere else, or if he was the fighter on the ground that is sharing these tweets. My conclusion is that he is actually a fighter on the ground, and one of the ways that we can tell that is he has a lot of fighters on the ground in Syria post like very candid videos that aren't highly edited, kind of like you can see on the bottom. He has a video of just using his walkie-talkie. He has another video of him, shooting a gun and running through a building. This account isn't active anymore, so unfortunately you guys won't be able to see. But yeah, we can see a lot of this just by who is connected to Salman Belarus and who is connected to the people following Salman Belarus. So this is another person we found in our Twitter data set. You can see that they post candid pictures of their dinner, which I know many of us do here in InfoSec Twitter. We like to show what we're eating or what we made because we're proud of it. This person I found because they were quoting Osama bin Laden in their tweet. And you can see that they don't really just call Osama bin Laden Osama bin Laden. They're calling him Sheikh Osama bin Laden. That word is gives him a bit of reverence in if you like him. And we have several ways of finding this tweet. One is manually through the visual graph interface. Another way is if I did a query for Osama bin Laden or for Sheikh Osama bin Laden, or because we had OCR'd all these images, we could have just looked up, hey, show me all the pictures that have Osama bin Laden or Sheikh Osama in them. And so there's multiple ways of discovering these actors. And you really just got to work with what fits with you as an open source intelligence investigator, or who your client is, what the end goal is of your investigation. Another very interesting thing I found in this space, and I got permission from Caliber Obscura to share this, is that we saw that Salman Belarus was talking to researchers like him, just to show off his guns or to give more press on his group, because that helps his PR. And the better PR he has, the more support he may have on the ground or internationally. If he has support internationally, that means that people may donate money to him to help him buy weapons or to help him, in operations. There's several dozen amateur researchers on Twitter, and they're all, they have their own focuses, but there's many of them that they follow foreign fighters on the ground. And they're doing the same thing that we know in disintermediation. They're getting interviews directly from people that are there. I've followed some of the most prominent researchers with the Sock Puppet account that I made. So, and when I was going through our data set, I could see, hey, like this unknown username is being followed by like these two respected researchers. That may imply that this person is an actual fighter on the ground. One of the hard things in the whole space where we're looking at jihadi content is the person posting this an actual jihadist, or are they just a fan that's reposting stuff that they found? So doing a little bit of kind of like who was this person related to kind of analysis will help you determine whether or not a person is on the ground. And while some people may ask, I respect the privacy of the community of researchers online. I'm not going to provide a list of who to stalk. You can look up Caliber Obscura. He's very popular, but he has around 40,000 followers. So maybe there's going to be a lot more noise than what it was several years ago when he didn't have that many followers. So we're going to be looking at some cool stuff using Google's Vision API. So on the photo on the left is a eulogy poster of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's son, the former leader of ISIS. He was killed in an operation, and the media groups affiliated with ISIS, they wrote like, oh, like, you know, the son of the caliph has passed away, you know, give him prayers and blessings. If someone in ISIS was to just post this photo, there's no way you can find that on Twitter with just a query, a normal query with a string or with keywords. But when you're ingesting this into Google Cloud and you're doing optical character recognition, you can either look up the word shahuda, which means martyr. You can look up the Wilayat Hims, which is the province of ISIS geographically where this operation happened, or any other keywords. This one's interesting because they have both languages, but if this was only in Arabic and I also look up an English query of Khalifa, as long as the Arabic word translates into something similar to Khalifa, it would pull it up. So while like this looks like it might be a very interesting tweet we found, it may not be. This was not an ISIS supporter. This was just a researcher reposting news. So he did include the image, and he was like, hey, like, you know, Baghdadi's son was killed in this operation. But this guy is just a researcher. So there's, you know, nothing to be worried about. It's not like people would just like, you know, post a picture that they say that they love Osama bin Laden, right? Except that they do. So when I was looking up instances of people mentioning Osama bin Laden in images, I stumbled across this account, and I went to their profile, and this guy, Javed, this account isn't active anymore. He's very pro-Taliban. I think he appeared to be Turkish in origin. I found some old pictures of him sitting on a park bench in Istanbul. And then he was posting these nice, like, Tumblr-esque photos of, like, what looked like a European city. And like, you can see this tweet. It's 3 images. There's him writing something in the snow and him walking through a town. He wrote in the snow, Talib, which means student, and we know that's a rude word for Taliban. And then there's just like this town. I was really interested in seeing what this town is. And what I did is I went to the second picture in that tweet, and the building had a logo on it, and it said NTA. And I put that in every single logo, reverse image search. I did Google searches on Google searches to try to figure out, like, is this like a resort building or company? Who is this person? What town are they in? Do they support the Taliban? Is this Europe? It was really difficult at first. I found this really cool image of him holding a Taliban flag on top of a hill, and this looks like a European city. And we had some people in the office that were had spent time in Europe, living there or working there, and we spent several minutes, and we couldn't figure out where this was. The target also had a Periscope account, and he posted some videos walking through the city with some license plates showing, but they were too blurry to capture their pattern or their numbers, and I couldn't figure out what they were. Eventually, I slept it over. I was like, hey, like, I'm just gonna do this tomorrow when I get back to the office. And I went back to the Periscope account, and we saw that the first 2 broadcasts he had done had the location enabled. And and it was a very small town in Germany. When I looked at the location on Google Earth and Google Maps, I was able to geolocate all the photos in the town and confirm that this person was indeed in this European city. This person was also interesting because they were making TikTok videos for the Taliban. I don't know if they're doing it in an official capacity or if they're just fanboys. There's a lot of those online. But you can see, like, he gets decent engagement on pictures just like the one on the hillside. So unfortunately, we can't look this person up now, and I've redacted their privacy because you know, I'm not here to accuse them of a crime. I just think it's interesting what content they choose to post. The other interesting natural language process capability we found is since you can look into what's posted in images, you can look up handles of Twitter accounts. So I looked up, I want to look up pictures that have Salman Belarus's handle. So we have Miles from Sula Report that talked about how Mohammed Tactical is fundraising for airsoft rifles for training people. And in his tweet is a picture he got from Salman Belarus where it has his Twitter handle. And then on the right side, you have someone that I think doesn't like Salman Belarus. And they talked about how Salman Belarus said that there'd be a surprise in the coming weeks, and that surprise never came. So I think he's just making fun of Salman Belarus. But if you've been on Twitter long enough, you know that people post screenshots of other people's tweets because maybe they don't want to be censored if they're quote tweeting someone, because that other person will be notified if you quote tweet someone. Maybe they expect that tweet to be deleted, or maybe they just don't want the other person to know that they're subtweeting. And the way you can get around that is by posting photos. And this is an interesting capability, especially when archive.org may not have enough data on your target or other archiving sites. So we have another look at extracting text from images. We have this photo from the UK of Anjum Chowdhury, who is a very notorious preacher. Google's API was able to pull all of the text from all the posters that its supporters have because they write it in English and it's generally structured text. So if I want to look up the term Khalifa again, or Caliph, we could see that it comes up in one of their posters. I was expecting to find more ISIS-related propaganda by doing these queries, but I didn't get them. And I think part of the reason is the groups that Salman Belarus is affiliated with are not pro-ISIS groups. They're more pro-Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is more of an al-Qaeda-aligned group. And they have a lot of ideological differences with ISIS. So the people that follow HTS will necessarily follow ISIS. And therefore, the Twitter dataset that we have may not be as useful to find ISIS propaganda. So the things that we do find are mainly researchers that are talking about people and doing things. Yeah. This is a very, very cool feature of BrainSpace. I sat into a very cool webinar by the Dutch OSINT guy, Nico, on SANS, and he showed a cool website called relatedwords.org, where if you look up any city or any topic, it'll show you the most affiliated keywords with it. So if I'm American and I'm doing an investigation in Paris, or I'm trying to infiltrate a French group online, and I don't know anything about France or Paris, I'll look up Paris in relatedwords.org, and it'll show me, you know, different things affiliated with the city or things that are similar. Relatedwords.org is pulling this from the internet and from dictionaries. BrainSpace is a very similar feature, but it'll find related words in your own data set. So on the bottom, we have a screenshot from one of the product demos that I found online. And the data that was ingested was food related. I think it may have been cooking manuals. The query is wine. And you could see some of the related words on the bottom, just like Pinot Noir. Like, I don't know much about alcohol, but I found out that Pinot Noir is like a type of wine. So as an analyst, if you're very limited in what you think is your keywords for investigation, you can just put in what you know, and BrainSpace can tell you more relevant keywords. We use this to extremely effective ends in the next part of the presentation. So we might know that some of the most famous people in terrorism contemporarily are like Osama bin Laden, Anwar al-Awlaki, the American who went to Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. But more in common are people like Abdullah Azzam and Thomas Haghammer wrote a very good book on this topic earlier this year. He's kind of known as the grandfather of ISIS, grandfather of Al-Qaeda, my bad. And there's different like sheikhs and religious leaders and extremist group people that have different reverence in different jihadist communities. So Osama bin Laden may be universally liked by jihadists, while Anwar al-Awlaki might also be universally liked by extremists. But Abdullah Azzam might be more liked by extremists that are more into Al-Qaeda. When I use the feature in Brainspace that we saw previously where it'll tell you similar words, I kept on seeing names like Azzam, bin Laden come up, and Brainspace suggested to me that there's variations or similar words that for some reason are related. And we saw that, at least for Osama bin Laden, in our data set, we saw the word say Usama and say Usama bin Laden, which it translates to Sheikh Osama bin Laden in Turkish. And the big difference is, if someone's talking about Osama bin Laden from an academic point of view, they're just going to call him bin Laden. But if someone's talking to him in reverence, they're going to say Sheikh. And I was able to come up with all these like aliases and nicknames that are used extremely exclusively by jihadists and jihadist sympathizers. And this isn't an exhaustive list. We can talk about that privately if you're interested in learning more about how do you do this. And this is mainly in Turkish. There's so many more languages out there that people will talk about terrorism online. So if we look into Abdullah Azzam, we can see that on the top, I wrote a query where I'm looking up every entity, person of every variation of Abdullah Azzam that I know of in my data set. And what it comes up with as a result is this map of people that may be talking about Abdullah Azzam in their normal discourse on Twitter. So these people aren't the researchers that are just talking about him as a research point of view. These people are talking about him in reverence. So as an analyst, you have a much more focused scope if you're looking at these targets when you know they're talking about a specific person. So like I said, like I don't need to be a linguist or a Turkish linguist or Arabic linguist to do this kind of work or to find these breadcrumbs. But I do have a general good understanding of the terrorism culture. I've been self-studying this for a very long time. And your analysts can do that too. And it's a lot easier to look into and study a culture than it is to study an entire language. So Brainspace has been used a lot in the disinformation space to discover campaigns. That's what my previous research has been in when I spoke in Canada and San Francisco. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like how do they differ. So disinformation networks have certain shapes to them. They look like starfish patterns, and we'll see that in the next slide. There's a lot of signal boosting, and there's been a lot of mainstream research into how you can look into them. On the other hand, terrorist groups are more hidden in plain sight because they act like human networks. And like human networks, they know that they may be being watched and they'll adjust their behavior to compensate so they don't get banned. So the other problem we have is, are people just mentioning extremists and popular people from an academic point of view? Are they just reposting terrorist content? Or are they originally posting things because they're part of these groups on the ground? In the disinformation industry, we call this signals. So signals are heuristics, artifacts that are extremely unique to certain groups. And to find these signals, you need to have a cultural understanding of what group you're looking at, but you don't need to be a linguist. We're going to look at what bot looks like real quick. So this is what a bot network looks like. This is one of my favorite bots. I spoke about this in November, and I even spoke to one of Twitter's abuse teams about this bot, and they still haven't deleted it. I'm sure it's just not a priority. It just spews propaganda all day, and you can see if you go to these accounts that they're pulling the pictures from someone's Instagram. They're highly inauthentic, and their behavior is fully automated. But if we look at these communities, we see they're more natural. There's people of 2, 3, 5 talking to each other. It's not the same starfish pattern. On the context and the topic of signals, Ray is a friend that works at DFR Lab, and he was talking about how a recent Facebook takedown on Myanmar was difficult because it took his team a very long time to find those signals that were affiliated with the inauthentic content that was being pushed by this government. But when he did find that signal, Facebook, with their big data set, were able to query that at scale to discover where propaganda was coming from and ultimately take it down. So similarly to, like, he uses the term signals and I use the term signals too, because I found the signals like the language modifiers that were useful for our work. So one really cool tool in our toolbox that I haven't used personally, but it's been in the news a lot, is so there's a huge marketplace for contract tracing and location data. The New York Times did this great article on how your privacy is at stake if you own a modern cell phone. And if you look into it, there's a huge industry of companies that they sit on apps that may be popular, but they're collecting your geolocation data, and they're selling that to advertisers. This is happening all around the world. I was able to get a demo for one of these products past couple months, and I looked into this location that we see on the right. So this is Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's compound in Idlib, Syria, where he was killed last year. And I made a graph, a little circle similar to this size, and I was like, hey, show me all the cell phones that have passed through this area in the past 2 months before the raid happened. So I did that query, and I found phones that are still active to this day that may or may not have had a connection to the compound where Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is. And this is just commercially available. You just need to know where to buy this data from. I'm not going to be talking about what vendor I did this through. They didn't allow me to talk about that, but you can find this on your own. And we've seen how geolocation data is very useful in other leaks like the Strava fitness data leaks a couple years ago. Some lessons that I learned personally doing this investigation is that evidence collection and management is tricky, and that archiving pages and accounts one by one may take a while. I looked into Hunchly, which is made by a member of the OSINT community, Justin Seitz, and it appears to be very useful for the type of work that I would like to do, that I've done with this research. I also suggest that you make a clean social media account to investigate the community you're looking at, but you need to make sure that you pre-text into that community before you do your investigations, because people get suspicious and they'll block you. The other lesson I learned the hard way is that accounts get deleted very quickly, especially recently in the past late 2019, early 2020, when it comes to terrorist content or foreign fighters on the ground. I found 2 backup accounts for Salman Belarus, and I found them late at night as I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I tell myself, hey, it's late. When I wake up in the morning, I'm gonna scrape this on Twint. And I wake up in the morning and it's deleted, and it sucks because I lost all that data, and that happened to me not once but twice. So my suggestion is look into how you want to script data, and yeah, this is my 10-minute warning. Yeah, look into how you want to script data and how you want to scrape accounts, and have that ready whenever you have a target you want to look into. The other logo you see is Buscador. I didn't write about this, but some people prefer to have dedicated VMs for their investigations. I didn't find it necessary for the work I was doing because I didn't use too many OSINT tools. But I didn't use like the pen testing tools that we're used to in this industry. But it is out there if you just prefer to make your own workflow like that. Other capabilities we have with Brainspace and with Twitter investigations that I didn't use for this project, but you should look into, is my disinformation work that I presented in Canada at Countermeasure. That's on YouTube. I have a website and blog where I talk about some of these topics, and I have my slides and references from my previous conferences. Dave Atel at Immunity had done some great walkthroughs looking at Russian propaganda, the IRA tweet data set that Clemson did, and we ingested that into Brainspace and saw how we could do the research differently. And one of the linguistic modifiers that he saw, just to give you an example, is that in the IRA tweet data set, the Russians were using an apostrophe that looks like a normal apostrophe to you and me for humans reading it, but it comes from the Cyrillic keyboard. So it has a different ASCII code that maps to that character. So if you have a big data way of looking at Twitter data, you can say, hey, I'm not looking for apostrophes. I'm looking for all the tweets that contain this character that looks like an apostrophe that may be from a keyboard in the region I'm investigating. Yeah. And yeah. So I did this research a year ago. Since then, there's been evolving TTPs on behalf of the people we're looking at. We saw that a lot of foreign fighters have been transitioning from Twitter to Telegram. We saw that they changed their names to more Western names, like Salman Belarus switched his name to Nick Walker, but he also got banned. And this was recently posted by Switched on Twitter. He found an ISIS Telegram channel that has, cats. So they're trying to be careful not to get banned all the time. And you should know that as an investigator. So some of the applications that I want to see with this technology is to prevent or alert events of terrorism. The Christchurch shooter, for example, posted his arsenal on Twitter before he committed his act of violence. And he wrote in plain English and human readable and machine readable English and other languages, names of people that may have been signals in the alt-right, far-right movement. That may be able to be, you may be able to pick that up in real time, depending on if that's a priority for the teams at Facebook or Twitter, wherever they're active. Outside of terrorism, you can apply this to any group you're investigating, whether they're hacker groups, or if there are any social group, anyone, we can apply these tools to. We can also, instead of just Twitter data, look at Instagram data, Facebook data, VK, TikTok, Telegram. You just gotta scrape it, ingest it into whatever analysis software you're doing, and enrich it with Google's tools. And this analysis was done by me, one analyst, in 2 months on one data set with a very small budget. And this is everything I found. Imagine what you can do at scale with automation, budgets, and an entire team of analysts, similar to government agencies like the National Counterterrorism Center, where they have hundreds of people, hundreds of analysts. So there's a lot more out there. Also, to close this off, we have we see that this is kind of a change in warfare. We have human intelligence online. We have the cyber component. We have information operations on Twitter. Threat actors that don't like Salman Belarus, like the Russians or Syrians, I can guarantee you that they're also monitoring him on Twitter. And he did end up, I know he faked his death earlier, but he actually did die last summer. So I believe that whoever targeted him was able to do so because they mapped his behaviors. This is some of what we learned. I'm going to go through the last slide real quick because we're running out of time. But this is kind of what I hope you guys will get some takeaways and be able to apply to your own OSINT investigations, even if they're not related to terrorism. These are some great resources I recommend you guys look into, some great Twitter accounts. Shout out to Caliber and Miles and Switch for helping me a little bit with this presentation. These are some other groups you can look into or join if you're interested in combating terrorism or extremism online. If you're looking for me, I just graduated, so I'm looking for a job. So if you have any leads or if you want to hire me, we can talk about that. I'm going to be posting the slides in a couple days. On my Twitter is Lockheed Martini. My email is here. I'm on LinkedIn too, and you can message me on the Discord server if you have any direct questions. But yeah, we got to get to questions now. Michael, can you help with that? Do we have time?
Yep, we've got a little bit of time, so let's go ahead and see if we can hit up with a couple questions. One question that has been coming through, there's been a lot of discussion about the how the data set got compiled and really what criteria that you were using the process for putting the data together. So can you highlight a little more about the process that you went through to collect the data?
Yeah, so I'm not a data engineer, but I believe the team at Immunity used an application or package called Tweetybird, which you can identify a target account. You can say how many tweets you want to download from that account, and you can download the networks related to that account. So this is kind of like the process, and we have the technology stack here. If you want to talk more in detail about that, do hit me up on Discord. I think there's a lot more details that I can't do in under a minute. Next question, Michael.
Sure. So one of the things that occurred to me as I was listening to your talk, and this has been fantastic, Zeshan. So I know folks on the Track 2 channel have really appreciated it. Is really what are some of the ways that you assess who's a jihadist versus a fanboy versus a researcher? Is it really just your subjective sort of look at the information that you're seeing? Is it seeing how often they're being connected, and you know, what are some of the ways that you're making that determination?
Great connection, because online there's a lot of fanboys and there's a lot less actual fighters on the ground. One thing that I did notice with these two accounts that we were flipping through right now is 53 Muslim had a lot more candid videos. If you're a poster, if you're a reposter, you're probably just gonna post like the epic like fight battles or epic like explosion videos. But people that are on the ground, you know, they're human. They share their lunch, like or their dinner. They're gonna be posting like low resolution image videos. They might even have very few views. Like 53 Muslim has 43 views on that video. He has 109 views on this walkie-talkie video. The other thing that I found is that a lot of these, or some of these foreign fighters were being followed by respected researchers in this field of counterterrorism, which I know that some of them interview these people and write blog posts. So that's how I can tell that they're probably real fighters. It's just that I'm not going to disclose those researchers are, because I don't want them to have to adopt, because all of a sudden all these people from layer 8 are stalking their accounts or causing their sources to go offline. I believe that answers the question, right, Michael? So we can go to the next one.
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you for that. And one more question I'll throw out, and we are a couple minutes over time. But okay. Just I wanna call out to Didymus, asking earlier in the presentation about being able to tell the difference between researchers and perhaps PSYOPs programs. And so any thoughts as far as how to determine whether or not someone you're seeing is actually part of more of an operational program?
I mean, operational, like part of a terrorist group versus being part of a researcher?
I think it could probably be a variety.
Okay, so actually very good question, and I didn't put this in my presentation, but there's some foreign fighters on the ground talking about evolving TTPs. They used to say in their bio that they're a jihadi in Idlib or in other parts of Syria, But then they started using terms like, oh, I'm just a journalist visiting the area. And yeah, so like some people, and I have on my back end, I looked into probably just under 100 like jihadist related accounts of potential foreign fighters. They may claim they're journalists or they're just researchers, but they're actually like propagandists on the ground that are doing information operations, or they're doing the propaganda aspect of warfare. I have inside sources because of the relationships I've built with some of the people in the community on who some of those journalists or people faking to be journalists are actually fighters. But I won't be able to discuss individual cases or accounts. Those are great questions, guys. I'm glad we had just under 100 people come to this talk. Do hit me up either in the Track 2 Slack channel, and I can answer questions publicly, or if you want to ask me something privately, you can message me directly on the Discord, my bad. And yeah, thank you so much for letting me part of this cohort of great OSINT people. I'm looking forward to the rest of the talks.
Great, and with that, Zeshan, thank you very much for presenting here at Layer 8 Virtual. And just a reminder to you, I'll dismiss you so that we don't have any sort of technical problems here. But again, make sure to check out Track 2, everyone, for the commentary, and ping Zeshan up directly at Lockheed Martini. And with that, we're going to go ahead